In 1904, if you were a working-class immigrant in San Francisco, Italian, Portuguese, Chinese, Mexican, and you needed to borrow money, the answer from every bank in the city was the same. No, banks were not for people like you. Banks were for businesses, for the wealthy, for people who already had money. The unwritten rule of American banking was brutally simple. We lend money to people who don't need it. That rule had stood for 100 years, until a fruit and vegetable salesman decided it was wrong. Amadeo Pietro Giannini was born in 1870 in San Jose, California, the son of Italian immigrants. His father was shot and killed in a dispute over $1 when Amadeo was just 7 years old. He grew up fast. At 13, he left school to work in his stepfather's wholesale produce business in San Francisco, hauling fruit, negotiating with farmers, learning how ordinary people worked and what they needed. He was extraordinary at it. By the time he was 31, he had made enough money to retire. He was done, comfortable, finished. He lasted about 3 years in retirement before something pulled him back. His father-in-law died in 1902, leaving Amadeo to manage the family's banking interests. He joined the board of a local savings and loan, and what he saw there infuriated him. The bank was ignoring the entire Italian immigrant community surrounding it. Hundreds of thousands of hard-working people, his people, who had money under their mattresses because no bank would take their deposits or give them a loan. Giannini proposed that the bank change its approach and serve these customers. The board refused. He resigned in disgust, and then he went and built his own bank. On October 17, 1904, Amadeo Giannini opened the Bank of Italy in a converted saloon in the North Beach neighborhood of San Francisco. His first day's deposits totaled $8,780, brought in by people who had never set foot in a bank before. From the very beginning, Giannini did things no banker had ever done. He walked the streets of North Beach, he knocked on doors, he visited fishing boats and produced stalls and construction sites. He talked to people where they lived and worked, in Italian, explaining what a bank was and why they should trust it with their money. He stayed open late, until 9 or 10 at night, so that working people who couldn't leave their jobs during banking hours could come in after work. He made loans on a face and a signature, extending credit based on his own judgment of a person's character and capacity to repay, rather than on collateral or connections. He hired staff who spoke the languages of his customers: French, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese. He opened accounts for children with a single penny, believing that a child who opened an account would be a customer for life. Most radically of all, he advertised. No established bank in America advertised to ordinary people. Giannini took out newspaper ads, ran promotions, put signs in shop windows. Banking was something you sold to people who hadn't yet thought to want it. Within a year, deposits had quintupled. Then came the earthquake. On April 18, 1906, the San Francisco earthquake destroyed much of the city. Fire burned for 3 days afterward. When it was over, more than 3,000 people were dead, and half the city was in ruins. The vaults of every major bank in San Francisco had been heated by the fires so intensely that opening them risked destroying the contents. Most banks stayed closed for weeks, but Giannini had acted before the fire reached his bank. He loaded his entire vault, gold coin, currency, and securities, onto a horse-drawn garbage wagon hidden under a layer of garbage and vegetables, and moved it to his home in San Mateo, 18 miles outside the city. 3 days after the earthquake, while other banks were still locked shut, Giannini set up a plank across 2 barrels on the waterfront at Washington Street Wharf. And he started making loans, on a handshake, to fishermen, to shopkeepers, to families who had lost everything, to rebuild. The people of San Francisco never forgot it, neither did the city. San Francisco's recovery was funded, in significant part, by a banker operating from a wooden plank in the street. Giannini went on to build something no one had seen before: branch banking. The idea was simple. Instead of one bank in one location, build a network. Branches across cities, across regions, across states. Spread the risk, expand the reach. Get banking within walking distance of everyone who needed it. By 1918, the Bank of Italy was the first statewide branch banking system in America. By the mid-1920s, it was the third largest bank in the country. In 1930, Giannini renamed it the Bank of America, deliberately chosen to signal that this was not a bank for Italians or immigrants or San Franciscans. It was a bank for everyone. He financed Hollywood, making loans to the young movie industry when every other bank considered film a frivolous risk. He financed the Golden Gate Bridge. He financed California's agricultural expansion. He financed the aerospace industry. He also created the first women's bank, an entire floor of his headquarters run exclusively by female officers, designed to give women their own professional banking environment and help them achieve economic independence. And he invented the personal loan, the home mortgage for ordinary people, the installment loan, the car loan. Banking services that we now consider completely normal, that every person in the world uses, were invented or popularized by this fruit salesman from San Jose. Here is perhaps the strangest thing about Amadeo Giannini. He refused to become a millionaire. Not because he failed, he presided over one of the largest banks in the world, but because he believed that personal wealth was a corruption, that a banker who grew rich off his customers had his priorities wrong. When he discovered that his net worth had risen to several $1 million during the 1920s, he gave most of it away to the University of California, to research foundations, to his employees through profit-sharing schemes that were decades ahead of their time. He died in 1949 with an estate of just $489,000. A man who had overseen more than $6 billion in bank assets left barely $500,000. He reportedly said he didn't want his children to be burdened by great wealth. Warren Buffett, who read the biography of Giannini as a young man, called him one of the greatest business figures in American history. When Buffett made his famous $5 billion investment in Bank of America in 2011, he cited Giannini as his inspiration. So what does A.P. Giannini teach us? First, the unwritten rule is usually wrong. Every banker in America agreed that working-class people were bad credit risks. Giannini looked at the same people and saw trustworthy customers who simply hadn't been given a chance. Questioning the assumption everyone else accepts is where the biggest opportunities live. Second, go to the customer. Giannini didn't wait for immigrants to walk into his bank. He went to their boats and stalls and work sites. He met them where they were, in their language, on their terms. That willingness to move toward the customer, rather than expecting the customer to move toward you, is the most underrated business skill in existence. Third, crisis is opportunity for those who are prepared. Every bank in San Francisco was paralyzed by the earthquake. Giannini had moved his assets in advance and was making loans while rivals were still locked out of their own vaults. Preparation plus courage in the moment of crisis, that is the formula. And fourth, purpose is more durable than profit. Giannini's bank grew because it served people, not despite it. His refusal to maximize personal wealth wasn't naive idealism. It was a long-term strategy that built loyalty, trust, and a customer base that no competitor could match. He said it himself. "I don't want to be rich. No man actually worth $100 million is honest." We began with a city full of immigrants who couldn't get a loan. We end with the largest bank in the world, built on handshakes, on staying open late, on a plank across 2 barrels in the street after an earthquake. A produce salesman built modern banking, not because he wanted to get rich, but because he thought it was wrong that ordinary people had nowhere to put their money and no one willing to help them get ahead. That is what it means to make America. Thank you for joining us for episode 6. Our next episode is Samuel Colt, the man who made the revolver, and in doing so, made the American West possible. Until then, stay curious,